Hi, I'm Zeeling, and today I'm going to be doing a tier list for all of the new leaders that are coming out with Set 2 Shadows of the Galaxy for Star Wars Unlimited. So let me go over the tiers that I have set up over here. First we got S tier, which is the meta-defining leaders. So these are all leaders that I think are going to start off in the early meta with just they're going to be fairly easy to build, and they're going to have just a really clear meta impact. So those are all going to be S tier. I think there's potential for some of the leaders from from these tiers to move up, and once a good build is found, to go into S tier, right? But I think S tier right now, how I'm going to be ranking them is just right off the bat. These leaders are super strong and are going to have a big impact. In A tier, we got all the strong leaders. Probably not as straightforward strong as the S tier leaders, but potentially could be doing a lot of things that are pretty impactful. B, we got the potential tier. A lot of these are likely going to be leaders that have a lot of synergy potential, where if people find the right builds, they could end up being pretty decent. In C tier, we got all the mid leaders. These ones are, they're not terrible, right? You can play them, but they're not doing anything too exciting, or they might be overshadowed by another leader that is currently existing. And then finally, in D tier, we got all the leaders that are bad for whatever reason, or maybe they need additional support for future sets because there's just not enough synergy to build around them currently. Alright, so let's start it off with Garsaxon. So I'm going to put him into B tier here with potential. So I think the Garsaxon deck, where you're trying to play a bunch of upgraded units, so likely a bunch of units with shields that come attached, could be potentially pretty good. I think you run into a few issues where his leader is not super strong, right? Where he is a 6 deploy leader, 4/7, which is not the best, right? When we look at currently Boba Fett, that's 5 mana 4/7 and does a bunch of stuff on his flip turn. So that's going to be a pretty big downside. But a lot of the units that he could play, having a 7 fleet defender that is a 4/2 shielded is pretty strong, right? And having a crafty smuggler that's a 3/2 shielded, things like that. This is all pretty strong in theory, so I think he has a decent amount of potential, and if you're able to find the right build for him that's probably aggro-y, tempo, that type of thing, he could be pretty good. I'm going to put Kira in S tier. So Kira, I think, falls into the category where I think her action on the front, we're giving shield tokens, it's fine. It's not anything super exciting. I think in the late game and against certain decks, it can matter a bunch. But really what is going to make her good is her flip, right? Where she gets to basically half the health of everyone on the field. And what that means is basically you're going to just save her until the opponent flips their leader. Where once the opponent plays their leader, you get to play Kira, you get to have their health, and you can get to trade with pretty much every leader in the game, more or less, except for some of the weird ones that have 12 HP or something like that. But yeah, because of that, Kira is going to be really strong. I think just fits really well, where you're going to have Kira, Aiden, and Krennic as all options for your blue villainy control decks, and they're going to have their better matchups. Each one's going to have their better matchups, and you're really going to just be able to choose whatever one you want, depending on what the meta is that you're predicting. So I think that's going to be really strong, and she just kind of fits into a shell that we already know is really good. Finn, I'm going to put in D tier. So I'm really not sure what Finn is trying to do. Defeat a friendly upgrade on a unit if you do give a shield token to that unit. It's really clunky, and it's a bunch of extra steps for not a lot of payoff. Getting shield tokens is really nice, but why are you doing that when you could just play Luke and give shield tokens, right? It's not like Finn's stat wise as well. 5 deploy, 4/6 is not the greatest, right? So I think Finn is just trying to jump through so many hoops where other leaders can already just kind of do this better. Rey, either potential or strong. I'm going to put her into strong. I think she's going to have some fairly polarized matchups. She's going to, I think, replace Chirrut a lot and have kind of adopt like a similar shell, where this giving an experience token to a unit with 2 or less power is actually surprisingly strong when we think about the units that Heroism has, right? You're able to just turn 1 make a 2/5 R2D2, which is super good, and then make that a 3/6 on the next turn for 3 resources that you split up, right? So that's pretty good. You're able to buff like A-Wings, you're able to buff Conquer Dawn Protectors, and she is also a Force unit, so that makes things like Force Throw a more viable option, and Force Throw is really strong, right? So I think Grey has a lot going for her. She's probably going to have some matchups that are a lot better for her than others, right? I think she performs pretty well into the aggro decks, right? She's going to have Conquer Dawn Protectors. She is Restore 3, right? So she's going to have a really good matchup into aggro. Her control matchup is probably not going to be great, but maybe there are some ways to solve that. We'll have to see. But I think she has a lot of things going for her, and especially that Force trait is really important. Hondo Ohnaka. So I'm going to put him also in D tier. So I think he does stuff with Smuggle. I think this is going to be... Hondo is really someone that's going to play a lot better in Limited. In Constructed, I think he's really not doing that much. There's not that many good Smuggle cards, really. A lot of them are pretty overcosted for their Smuggle effect, and there's really only like a handful of good ones that you actually really want to be playing. So because of that, I don't think you really want to just make a full Smuggle deck with Hondo, and I don't think that'll work out super well, unfortunately. Jabba the Hutt, I'm going to put in strong as well, A tier. I think his ability to just have innate ramp, ramping in this game is super strong. And he is able to just get out units earlier, and especially if he's also just ramping with Resupply or Super Laser Tech or any of those other cards, he potentially can get out some really strong late game units, like a full 2, even like 3 turns ahead of time, depending on how much he's ramping, which is pretty crazy if it works out. I think the villainy got a lot of tools to help survive the early game. And if you're playing, like, for example, green or red, you have like TIE Silencer, you have Barrage, you have a lot of tools to not die early, and then you just start slamming like all these like crazy Crate Dragon, Rancors, Star Destroyers, Vaders, Maul, all Palpatines, all these crazy cards, right? So I think Jabba has the potential to be really strong because of that. Moff Gideon, either mid or bad. I'm not exactly sure what he's really trying to be doing. His ability gives +1/+0. It's not great. It's worse than Jin's, right? Like Jin's was pretty good because your units would survive the attacks, but when you're doing it with +1/+0, they're often just going to trade, and that's not really getting you anywhere. He's likely just worse than Tarkin in a lot of spots too, right? With this color combination, Tarkin also deploys on 5, but Tarkin gives permanent buffs, and Moff Gideon's ability is really not really too good about, and it's not really what you want to be doing, I think. Boba Fett Daimyo. I'm going to put this in potential, I think. So Boba Fett, his ability seems really good on paper, right? Where you want to play units that have keywords, and those units are already the units you want to be playing. So it's like, wow, I get to just play all the cards I already want to be playing, and that's super strong. In practice, this ability is a lot more awkward than I think you originally think about it, where it's really strong if you play it with like ambush units, for example, right? Because you give it to the ambush unit and get to attack with it right away. However, it's not super strong otherwise, where a lot of times in this game, you want to be attacking with units first before your opponent gets to choose what trades they get. And his ability really wants you, if you're not ambushing, it really wants to be playing units first before attacking, which is not exactly the best play pattern to be doing in this game. So I think he has potential because you could build in the ambush.deck, and maybe that's pretty good. But I think with just building him as like an aggro deck or something is really not gonna work out the way you want it to, unfortunately. All right, Hunter. I'm gonna put him in D tier. Bad or need support. I think the card advantage that Hunter provides is not super important in this game. Like, eventually there might be a world where you're just playing a bunch of, I don't know, clone troopers that have the same name or something like that in the future, and you get to draw a bunch of cards, and maybe you can do something with all of that, and that's really cool. But if you're not doing that, and that's not enough support for it right now, right? I'm not really sure what Hunter's trying to be doing. His leader stats are not good. Card advantage doesn't matter. I don't really know what's going on here, but maybe there's something in the future that ends up making his ability pretty strong, because it's somewhat unique, I guess, right? Bosk, I'm going to put into B tier. I think he's also going to have some pretty polarized matchups where you really want to be putting bounties on your opponent's units, and, well, control often doesn't really play any units, so you're not really going to be able to cash out on your bounties, and that's going to be a really hard matchup for you. But I think, when he can get going, and if he's playing these, like, mid-rangey games where he's just cashing in on all these bounties and getting all this advantage off of it, he could be pretty strong. And I think into certain creature matchups, if your stuff lines up, it could work out for you. I think he does run into the problem where you're going to need, like, a bunch of to draw the pieces in the right order and then draw the pieces in the right combinations, where if you draw too many bounties and not enough ways to kill those creatures that you put the bounties on, you're going to run into trouble. If you draw too many creatures and not enough bounties, then you're not really using boss that well, and stuff like that, right? So I think he can run into those kind of issues, but he definitely has potential to really snowball and high roll if everything works out for you. So yeah, B tier probably. Kylo Ren, I'm going to put as strong. I think he is a very strong aggro deck, where if you are not interacting with him, he can just goldfish kill you super fast. Now, most people aren't going to be interacting, so that will probably not end up being the best thing ever. But it could honestly be pretty good at the start of the meta when people don't exactly know how to play around him and don't really know what the best pieces of interaction against him are. And he will just look really crazy as he is killing you on turn 4, something like that, right? I think in the future he might knock down in tier as people figure out how to counter him, because I think he doesn't have a ton of counterplay to a really good like anti-aggro deck, or a bunch of like anti-aggro tools, but we'll see how things develop. There's also the potential that there could be some kind of reanimator build on him, utilizing like Palpatine's return or something like that. But realistically, we're gonna have to probably get more reanimation spells rather than just one, just Palpatine's return. So he probably needs that in order for the reanimation deck to be any good. Bo-Katan. I think, unfortunately, she has to go into D tier. I think there really just aren't enough good Mandalorians right now in order to make her viable. She also runs into the problem where, kind of like Bosch, she only wants to really be playing against creature matchups, right? Where her ability is only good for, pinging units, and if the opponent doesn't have a lot of units to ping, then she really doesn't do that much. And because her synergies are not that strong with just the amount of Mandalorians there are, a lot of the Mandalorians can be like strong on their own, right? But they aren't necessarily super good together. So I think that's why she goes into D tier, unfortunately. All right, new Han Solo, S tier. Kind of like I was talking about Jaba, ramp is crazy in this game. And Han Solo can do some crazy things where you can build him as a super fast like zoo aggro deck where you are just vomiting your creatures onto the board and just getting a massive board presence early because you get this free ramp. And 2 damage to a unit, like, yeah, it matters, but a lot of times, like, those 2 damage on your A wing matter that much when they're either gonna kill it or not, right? Like, it does that 2 damage really matter, right? Where if you can play the A wing for 1, you're pretty down to play the A wing for 1, right? So Han's able to just vomit his hand. You can also build him more like mid-rangey, rampy, where you're trying to maybe ramp into some like home ones or some crate dragons or some something like that. That's a potential. So I think he just has a lot of strong options. And yes, seems from like early testing, he just seems super strong. So going to S tier for me. Cad Bane. I'm going to put him into mid. So I think he has some cute things going for him. The synergy with Tarkin Town is really nice, where you get to like, play an early Underworld unit. They have to ping their own creature, and then you get to finish it off with Tarkin Town. That's honestly a pretty strong synergy, and it allows you to have a really nice board presence early. The problem is, I think he is just weaker than current Boba Fett. And then Boba Fett's the exact same colors. Gets to the deck probably does very similar things to what Cad Bane is trying to do. And Boba Fett being able to just cheat on all the mana is, just like, we're seeing Han Solo and Jaba, right, in the high tiers. And Boba is also, an S tier hero, right? So I think because of that, Cad Bane unfortunately is mid, because you're most likely just worse than Boba in a lot of spots. So, but yeah, there's some cute synergies there, and because of that, not completely unplayable or anything. Dr. Afra. So this is in D tier because needs support. So you get to her ability, wants to do a bunch of things like discarding cards and things like that, and it's gonna be really cool when we can bring a lot of stuff back from the graveyard or do some kind of like dredge reanimator type things, for Magic, right? But currently we don't have support for any of that, so unfortunately I think she's just gonna be kind of in the waiting room for new sets. But once there is enough support for Dr. Afra, hey, she could bounce pretty far up potentially. So yeah, be on the lookout for any graveyard shenanigans type of stuff. All right, Fennec. Probably mid as well. Unfortunately, I think her ability is pretty strong, right? Like giving things ambush. If you watched my top 10 video, I talked a lot about tile intervention. I think giving units ambush is just super strong in this game. However, her leader side is really, really weak. She is a 5-mana 4/4, and that is really bad in a game that is so focused on this like big tempo leader flip turn. So it's possible that there will be situations where her hero ability can make up for that, but I think unfortunately it's often not going to. Lando, I'm also going to put in mid C tier as well. I think he can have some cool starts where you're like smuggling like his Falcon and things like that, and he is somewhat similar to Sabine stat wise. Obviously, 1 power weaker, really, right? Because Sabine was really like a 3/5. So he can have some cool starts, but I think his deck is likely just not consistent enough, and likely just doesn't put on pressure. And there's also just other leaders in his color combination that can probably do things better. Like original Han can probably do a lot of what Lando would be trying to do better. So C tier, maybe there's something going on. Anything that's like cost reduction has some potential, I think. So maybe somebody can find something really good to do with Lando, but I think as it stands, he doesn't look super strong. All right, then we got Mandalorian. I'm going to put him also in C tier. So I think if Rivals Fall was not printed, the Mandalorian actually has like a pretty decent amount of potential. Unfortunately, Rivals Fall is a card, and you know, the Mandalorian really wants you to be like suiting him up with upgrades and that kind of thing, but because Rivals Fall is likely going to be a pretty big in this meta, I think he's going to struggle into that. He might have some good matchups, honestly, where he's probably good into aggro decks where you just get to like exhaust all their units and upgrade your own and then have like a really nice beatdown plan or something like that. But yeah, because of Rivals Fall and how easy it's going to be to answer upgrades and things like that, unfortunately, I don't think he can really do much in the constructed meta, unfortunately. Yeah, so this is my initial thoughts with the leaders. I'm really interested to see how things shake out and how a lot of these leaders match up into the current meta. Which of the current meta leaders, you know, maybe even get better, which ones, you know, get worse, which ones stay the same. So it's going to be really interesting going into the first few weeks or months of this new set, and I'm really excited for how all these leaders and all the new cards shake things up. Yeah, so thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe. I'm going to be doing a lot of new Set 2 Shadows of the Galaxy content, so I'm also going to be likely doing a tier list for all the leaders for draft as well, because I think that's going to be pretty important, and it probably changes quite a bit for draft versus constructed, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. Bye.